Thank you so much for joining us today for this session on lighting up the future in digital equity in Arizona. It is my absolute pleasure to get to be the moderator today and to bring together this incredible panel of humans who are doing this work every single day and will bring to us their unique perspectives on how we work collectively to achieve digital equity across the state of Arizona and, of course, around the country. So we are really excited that you get to join us today. We hope that today is a level setting, a bit of an upskilling and a deep dive into the work that's being done in Arizona and a look at some best practices that are happening across the US. My name is Erin Carr-Jordan. I'm the Managing Director of the Digital Equity Institute, and I'm also the Head of Social Impact of Ed+ at ASU. I am also a 2013 Flinn-Brown Fellow. And so for that reason, I am incredibly excited to be in this venue today. Just a heads up, Mignonne Hollis, who is one of our fellow panelists today, is also a 2013 Flinn-Brown Fellow. We were members of the same cohort, so I think she's pretty fantastic. And I also think Flynn is pretty fantastic. Before we get started, I wanted to first thank Dawn Wallace and Danielle and her incredible team at the Flinn Foundation for all of their support and their leadership on this issue and countless other issues that are important to the state and to the humans that live in it. They are exemplars and they are just doing wonderful and meaningful work. And for that, I am incredibly grateful. Also, a huge thank you to our hosts, the Center for Civic Leadership. I can't speak highly enough about what a privilege it is to be part of this network and to be a member of this giant cohort that is working collectively to do great work in this state. And to be in this venue and to leverage this ecosystem in this group is just a privilege. So thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you, Flinn-Brown. Thank you, Arizona Civic Leadership. This is just super cool, and I'm very, very grateful. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We decided that we're going to use the Q&A feature. So on the bottom of your screen, for those of you who are familiar with Zoom, you'll see Q&A. Please feel free to post your questions down there. We will be paying attention to them and we'll make sure, we will do our best to make sure that they get answered by the person you are asking the question of. We're also going to be a little bit flexible. Some of us are here in Cleveland. We are attending the Pew Broadband Summit, and the sessions are still running, and it's the last day. So for those who are here attending that summit, you can probably tell by our backgrounds because they're very similar for each in our respective hotel rooms. And we stepped out to participate in this panel because it's so important. But I've asked them to go first. I've asked them to answer questions as they are posed to them. And then I've invited them to go back to the event so that they can continue to partake in those things that are really important as that's wrapping. So they will be here, they will fully engage, they will answer all the questions, and it won't change in any way how we present the panel. I've asked them to be gracious with their time, and we will be gracious and conscientious of theirs. So we're flexible. And so I just wanted to share that with you. So Q&A is great. The chat's reserved for other things. We can't monitor it and do all this at the same time. I don't have that capability myself. So please do use the Q&A. And before we started, I think everyone who works in this space recognizes that we are all working collectively, or the ideal is that we work collectively, because none of us can do this alone. And if we're not working as coalitions and learning from one another, we will not reach the intended goal, and we will certainly not do anything that is long-term and sustainable and is built on best practice. So we created just a short poll. And this is just one of the feedback loops that we're integrating into the actual model and into the planning, because this is a group of state leaders, of community leaders. You represent all the sectors. We just want to better understand who you are, from where you come, and what work you're doing. So please, this is the interactive part of the day. Please just take a moment and please fill out the poll. Let us know those things so we can all see it. And I'll give you some time and I'll stop talking. That's 15 more seconds. They're easy questions. And we did talk yesterday about the question that relates to broadband use or access. Part of that extends to people who are doing any kind of work in digital equity. So if your work includes things related to devices or literacy or support ecosystems or any of those things, please feel free to answer yes. Okay, what do our results look like? Let me see here. Okay, most people are from, this is a really good representation. Oh, fantastic. So Angela, question number 3 is the results of that are very interesting. And part of this is to create a mechanism by which we can tailor what we speak to meet the needs of the audience. And so that question in part was to make sure that if we have to level set, even around language and shared language, that we do that from the very beginning rather than making assumptions about what people know and don't know. Okay. So we're incredibly fortunate to have this group of humans with us today. Collectively, they bring decades of experience, a diversity of expertise, of area of focus, of background. Each is working on broadband or infrastructure or digital equity, but through a different lens. So as you'll hear, the work that each one of them is doing is vitally important to our achieving these goals, whether we're talking about Arizona or we're talking about the country. And it isn't until collectively that we can actually move the needle to ensure that everyone is able to thrive in the economy and in society. And I'm happy to share that in many, many ways, Arizona is an exemplar state. At this conference, I have heard it repeatedly, and it made me very, very happy because I think that, but it's again my lens and an N of one here. But that frame is being reflected back to us, and I'm really proud of the work that we're doing in the state and how we continue to work together. I have asked this esteemed panel to share more about who they are, what drives the work that they're doing, why they're passionate about it, and just a little bit more about who they are as humans rather than me reading their bios to you. My screen is dark. Well, that's strange. Hello. Sorry about that. Well, I was doing meaningful movement with my hands. It was a great story I was telling that was missed there. So thank you for letting me know, Don. Okay, so just one more brief intro. The state's taking a comprehensive approach to ensuring that we meet the needs of vulnerable populations. Vulnerable populations from the perspective of the state and from the federal government includes everyone from people living in low-income households, racial and ethnic minorities, elderly folks, people with disabilities, people in rural communities, non-English speakers, veterans, formerly incarcerated people, members of the LGBTQ community, and tribal communities. I shared very briefly that I work for the Digital Equity Institute and for ASU. The Institute itself is a nonprofit. We were stood up to ensure that the state could address all of those complexities of vulnerability, and that as we work to develop the plans to achieve digital equity, that those plans are community responsive and that they are comprehensive, scalable, and designed to be sustainable over time. And thanks to Jeff, we're working in close partnership with our broadband and infrastructure colleagues so that as affordable, reliable, high-speed internet is made available, that equity and empowerment are tightly woven as part of that model. And it's one of the reasons that I think Arizona is doing such great work, because you don't have a broadband conversation without the digital equity conversation, and the teams are walking in lockstep. And that's just fantastic. Our role itself involves everything from ecosystem building to meaningful engagement of stakeholders across all sectors, monitoring and evaluation, predictive analytics, modeling, asset mapping, planning, and we're doing all of that with an eye towards scale and leveraging force multipliers where we find them. Hopefully that means that we actually prioritize digital equity, that we get to moving the needle, and we do the thing that we purport to be able to do. I'm sure all of you have heard that this is a once in a generation opportunity, and that this is a potentially catalytic amount of money if it's used wisely. So that if it's used wisely part is key. So this group together, hopefully today, can help take and shape the frame so that we can talk about what wisely actually means and how we can work collectively to work towards achieving that goal. So without further ado, I will introduce very briefly each of our panelists, and then I will turn the floor over. First, Angela Siefer, who I think is just an incredible human. Angela is the Executive Director for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Jeff Sobotka. Jeff is the Arizona State Broadband Director for the Arizona Commerce Authority. Mignonne Hollis. Mignonne is the Executive Director of the Arizona Regional Economic Development Foundation. Derek Masseth. Derek is the Executive Director of the Sun Corridor Network. And last but absolutely not least, one of my favorite people, Rufus Glasper. Rufus Glasper is the President and CEO of the League of Innovation for Community Colleges. And you can just hear the expertise that is about to be shared, and I am just delighted. So Angela, the floor is yours. Thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin. This is very exciting, and I find it very entertaining that there's 3 of us in Cleveland sitting in our hotel rooms, and I'm the only actual Ohioan of that group. I'm from Columbus, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm from a small town in Ohio. And so I am thrilled to be having this conversation with you all. Again, I'm Angela Siefer. I'm the Executive Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. I helped found NDIA about 7.5 years ago because there wasn't an entity representing the kind of work you all are talking about doing. So we are a place where we help those folks talk to each other. We learn their best practices. We provide technical assistance, but then also we document those best practices, and we take that to both the folks on the ground doing the work so that you have something to reference, but then also we take it to policymakers, which is how we ended up with $2.75 billion for digital equity. So we're thrilled that is a reality, and we're thrilled to have Jeff as the one in Arizona who's in charge of that money. You all are in very good hands. The work NDIA does is really about making the most of that now, and making sure that we help you in the ways that you need help from us. So we have staff who have created amazing toolkits. There's a lot on our website around what is digital equity and what's digital inclusion and how do you do these things. When we first got started, we had our own confusion amongst those who had been doing this work, which I've been doing this work over 20 years. We just didn't call it digital equity then. And so had gathered up others who have been doing the work. And one of the things that we were talking about is, well, we don't have definitions for digital equity and digital inclusion, and we're kind of talking past each other on some of it. And do they actually mean different things, or do they mean the same thing? And so the definitions that we came up with is that digital equity is the goal. This is where we all want to get: individuals and communities having full access to information communication technology to do whatever it is they need to do. But then digital inclusion, that's the work. Right? This is the on the ground. How do we make digital equity a reality? Well, affordable broadband in the home, and then the right device, because a mobile phone isn't always it. And then there's the digital skills. Who's providing that digital skills training, and where does one go for it? And is it in the language that I need it to be in? And then the applications, are the applications the ones that I need to meet my needs? Those are that's the digital inclusion, right? All of those things that would then get us to digital equity. So what you all are figuring out and talking about is how to do that both in the local communities and at the state level. So Jeff's job is to figure it out at the state level, and might I say Erin's job to figure it out at the state level, but then it's also everyone doing it at the local level. And there's no reason to wait for that federal money. You all haven't been waiting for that federal money up to this point, right? You're figuring out the local level, and there's a lot of so who's doing what? Wait, what? Who has devices? Wait, is there a subsidy for that, or is there not a subsidy, right? So that's what's happening in a lot of places. You are not alone at all of figuring that out. So we think of that as asset mapping, coming from that place of, yeah, we have resources. We have something, somebody knows something, right? So figuring out what you already have first, and then figuring out what those gaps are. What's really fabulous about how NTIA, the federal agency with all this money, has structured this is that what they're saying to Jeff and all the other Jeffs that are in all the other states is they're saying, okay, well, here's some money for deployment. so you can make sure everybody has access to broadband. That's huge, right? That the infrastructure needs to be there. And then here's some other money, and this is going to help you with digital skills and devices, and helping folks know how to access. There's another federal subsidy. There is actually a federal subsidy for broadband service. It's called the Affordable Connectivity Program, $30 a month for eligible households. This is a significant investment. So who's doing all those things and being able to pull it together, right? So at the state level, Jeff, and he'll tell you more about this, has to create a plan, right? So it has to figure out both that availability of the internet, but then also the digital equity side, which is that affordability piece. It's the devices, it's the digital skills, it's the tech support, it's, how do you get access to that affordable connectivity program? Putting that all into a plan and making that availability problem and the digital equity problems, having them merge together. Right? Because if in places where there is no service, if we only focus on building the service and we don't also focus on affordability and the other barriers, we're going to be sadly disappointed when we build it out and it ends up with the same problem in places where there's already infrastructure, is that people aren't subscribing. So making sure to pull in folks at that ground level. So that stakeholder engagement is really huge. Having folks who are already working in our most disadvantaged communities to help us, they are the ones who can help us understand. In fact, the individuals themselves who are less connected, having them engage in the stakeholder process so we can hear from them and understand, so why don't you have internet at home? Right? What are the particular barriers for you? Is it the cost? Is it privacy and security? Right? Are you worried about someone's going to turn you in for something or other? Right? Are you worried that someone's going to get your credit card information? Those are all legit concerns. So making sure that we hear what those concerns are. Are you afraid for your child's safety? Yeah, that's why some people are like, no, not going down this path. So how do we address all the particular barriers? That's what you all are going to be figuring out as community, right? Both local communities, but then also as a state. It's fabulous that you have all the folks that you have in your state to help you with all of these things. So now I'm going to go back to Jordan, to Erin, I'm sorry, and see questions. Is there anything you missed that I missed that you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you put that in the chat. So from a policy perspective and from a national perspective, what do you see as currently? And what do you think is paving the way from a policy perspective?
I'm sorry, I don't think I quite understand. Can you ask again?
So are there any policies that are hindering doing the work at scale?
Oh, I see.
And are there any policies that are making it easier?
I think the policies that would hinder it are those that already in existence for existing programs, where folks are like, well, we have to run this, we have to run our workforce program like this, because this is how it's set up. And a lot of times those workforce programs in particular are not updated for the modern age, where you have to have digital skills. If you want a construction job, you need digital skills. To apply for anything, you need digital skills. So, and this is a question for you all to address at that local level. And sometimes these are often state level policies, to figure out what those barriers are. The thing we have in front of us is this huge opportunity of this money and the stakeholder engagement process, which I'm sure will sometimes be a little bit on the painful side, but to get through it and figure out together what your assets are and what those barriers are. And the barriers can be anything. It might be policy barriers, but it also might be language barriers, right? Like there's lots of things that keep us from getting where we want to go with technology.
Absolutely. Just leading into that, before we open up the questions to the attendees, one of the things that we've heard as a common theme, both in Arizona where we're talking with communities and here at the event, is that some states, some folks don't know what digital equity is yet. So they're very familiar with broadband and speak the language fluently, But when we talk about digital equity, it gets a little bit squishy. So how are you approaching that? And is there a technique that you're using in your work regularly to get people from really not understanding to being able to engage meaningfully?
Yes. So I think one of the simplest ways to do it is to undergo a workshop kind of process where you have a discussion with folks to say, how are you using technology in your life? What is an example of something where it's made something easier for you to accomplish, right? Like online banking or registering for a class or whatever it is. But then to discuss who are the individuals in your life where you see their non-use of technology impacting their ability to live fully. There's somebody in all of us, right? Somebody whose impact has been limited. And particularly when you pull in folks who work with low-income populations, their examples are going to, they can really have to do with their particular line of work, not just my mom or my dad or my uncle or whatever, but it has to do with the folks that they work with and how they've seen it be a barrier to often the services that organization itself provides. So framing it like that helps folks see the barriers, and then having that discussion with each other can help them see what that is amongst the other folks that are in the room. And it feels a little more real that way, rather than having someone like me come in and say, these are the barriers, is what is keeping folks from this amazing tool, which can be problematic. We all know that, but it is still a really valuable tool that we want folks to be able to make their conscious choices. Just like I make a conscious choice, right? When I'm going to go for a walk, I'm not going to take my phone, right? I make a conscious choice because I want to disconnect, but you want everybody to make that conscious choice.
Yep, absolutely. And I love that you touched on, you hit on the health piece. And I think it's sometimes when we're talking about literacy, for example, people or it's often omitted that we're also talking about access to telehealth, that we're talking about financial wellness and financial well-being and being safe and privacy and all of those things as well. So I really appreciate that you're getting at the nuance from a deeply personal way, because often we can only understand it when we come from our own perspective and our own lens. And it's, my cousin down the street doesn't know it, that kind of thing. It makes it real. Okay.
It does make it real.
Absolutely. So we're going to open up, please, for anyone who is in the audience. By the way, I don't know that, in fact, I'm certain that Angela did not do justice to her background. I should have known that would be the case. Angela has been doing this work and is one of the leaders, founders, matriarchs. I know you don't like that term, but this work is on the backs of her and lots of other folks in Cleveland and other places that for a very long time now have been advocating, it's decades, for this in a meaningful way. So to have her here as a resource and to be able to just ask questions if you want or not, it's a great opportunity. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, so Mike asked the question. Racial and second chance equity is a priority for the premier CEO organization in the state. What can the business community do to complement the implementation of digital equity at scale? There has to be more to it than simply organizing capital deployments. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Fabulous question. Could go a variety of directions with that. The digital equity side of this, the incredible investment we have coming in is not, it's not enough. We will never be done working on digital equity. Why will we never be done? Because we have inequities, right? We already have inequities and we have technology constantly changing. So unless we're going to solve equity and technology constantly changing, we're still going to have digital inequities. So a big piece of this is to figure out how to utilize this money so that it then creates systems level change so that everyone understands the value of having that tech support, of having the digital skills training, of having devices available, and not only understands it, but is willing to invest in it.
Yeah.
We always will have those programs running. We cannot invest and be like, okay, well, we got whatever, XX number of people connected to the internet, XX number of people who now have a computer, XX number of people who now have digital skills and walk away and think we've solved the digital divide, because we haven't. And this is a very much an equity issue. So coming at it with understanding that the racial equity, right, it's historic. It is systemic. So we have to address that at the same time that we're figuring this out. Because if we think we're just going to boom, put some money in and solve this problem, we're going to be really sad at the end of this money.
Absolutely.
So, fabulous question. The part about businesses, I think one of the most important things you can do is participate in these stakeholder engagement, this process, and as much as you can, invest in the coalition building that should be happening in every community around this issue, because the more folks are talking to each other about the work that they are doing. Remember, they don't call it digital equity. They might call it teaching computers to seniors. They might call it computer refurbishing, right? So, but there's a lot of that going on right now. Whatever it is that it's being called, to pull those folks together, or those who aren't doing the work but could be doing the work because they already serve those communities, pull them in and pull in the industries that benefit from folks having access to the internet. Who benefits? Well, retail, health, finance, government. Lots of folks benefit from more folks having access to the internet. So have them be part of the solution, both investing financially, but also just investing that people time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Any other questions? By the way, that was a phenomenal answer. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Angela, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I'll see you later. Okay. Now it is my tremendous pleasure to turn the floor over to Jeff Sobotka. Jeff, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it. Angela just set the stage for what digital equity is, what it is that we're talking about when we're beginning these conversations and beginning to look towards planning and working collaboratively. I would love for you to share more about what the state is looking at, both from a policy and a funding perspective. Because if anybody isn't talking about digital equity, they are likely talking about the funding mechanism that's coming down. So please, the floor is yours.
Absolutely, Erin. Thank you so much for the time. And as you mentioned, Angela's a pioneer in this area. One of the folks that I have looked to for guidance over the last couple of years. And a lot of what we're doing is based on her hard-won wisdom in this area. Probably the worst kept secret in the state is that we're going to be hiring Erin and the Digital Equity Institute to run our digital equity program in Arizona. Incredibly excited. They bring some unique capabilities, both from the ASU standpoint and then from the DEI standpoint in terms of people and processes. To give you some perspective, we have to create what we call a plan to create a plan for digital equity here in Arizona. And Erin was very excited, and she was pitching the folks who are doing this. And they said, Erin, you could probably cut, I think it was 17 pages out of your plan. So she's very ambitious, and I think that we're going to come up with something that is one of the best, if not the best in the country. So I'm incredibly excited about that. From a broadband standpoint, the state broadband director, I've been in this job a little over 3 years now. My first year was fantastic. I traveled around the state, met with people, and learned about issues in our state. Second year, COVID hit, and we were really thrown into a whirlwind of change and difficult times. And then this last year has been incredibly rewarding, because one of the challenges with broadband is we've always had good ideas on what we want to do. Unfortunately, we've never had the level of funding to do it, both privately and publicly. And there is a tremendous amount of money that I would like to talk to you a little bit about today, because I think that this is a once in a generation opportunity. And as Angela had mentioned earlier, building it is not enough. Handing somebody these amazing tools, I think it's great. I think that we will certainly work with our different communities, but I think that it's more importantly that not that we just work with them to provide the service, but we provide them the understanding and the insight to make the most of this. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. My background, I have worked in the telecommunications industry for over 25 years. I spent a lot of time with AT&T at the corporate headquarters in Dallas, learning a lot about how things really work in this industry, and I've tried to apply that. And I believe that we in Arizona have an incredible opportunity because in many ways we have a blank slate of what we're doing. There are other communities that have very extensive infrastructure in place. Unfortunately and fortunately, that isn't the case outside of Phoenix and Tucson. So we're aggressively moving to build this infrastructure. Couple good examples off the top of my head. We are working with a broadband carrier in Kingman and Lake Havasu City called Allo Communications. Allo is also going to be doing this in Yuma and providing broadband at a service, 10 gigabits to every address. So 10 gigabits up, 10 gigabits down. That's 10 times faster than we can get in the Phoenix and Tucson areas. So you're going to see cities like Kingman leapfrog Phoenix, which is fantastic. One thing I've learned in my time, my office sits in the Arizona Commerce Authority, is that a lot of the economic development decisions are made based on what infrastructure is in place. And getting this infrastructure in place is critical if communities like Kingman or Sierra Vista or Casa Grande want to continue to create the type of jobs, the manufacturing jobs that we want. Also, you have to have the workforce to do that. And I think digital equity is something, and we do look at a lot of this, at least I do, I should say, through a workforce lens. This is the sort of thing that we in Arizona have to, I say, grow our own, rather than import great people from all over the country, which we'll continue to do because we're growing. But let's take the folks that we have here and let's upgrade their skills. Let's give them a pathway to success. And I believe that working not just with ASU, but with our junior colleges, I think they're going to play a really important role in this skill development because broadband is a unique industry. For every broadband job created in the state, there are 2 private sector jobs created. So it's a great driver for economic activity. The IIJA, the infrastructure bill for broadband, some of you may have seen this slide previously. It breaks down into 4 main buckets with a couple buckets on the side that we won't get into too much detail. The BEAD program is an infrastructure-based program geared towards the most rural areas. The digital equity program, which we'll talk a little bit about today, basically takes this infrastructure and brings it to life for the people in these communities. It gives them the ability not just to access it, but to use it to better their lives. And it's an exciting time. Our tribal program, we work very closely with our tribes, the Navajo Nation, the Gila River Indian community, the Tohono O'odham, Yavapai Apache, I could go on, are all deeply involved with what we're doing here. And we're working with them not just on the tribal grants, but on what we call the middle mile grants. These are the grants to get connectivity into our rural areas. This is a very busy matrix. This will give you an idea of what we're looking at here in Arizona amongst those programs. If you look at the bottom, formula, competitive, and other, it gives you an idea. Formula is more like a block grant. Competitive means we have to go out and compete for those dollars. And other, the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is the 3rd one down, is a straight subsidy to low-income consumers. I'm very proud to say that we in Arizona are working through a lot of different groups. Derek Masseth, who's on the call as well, and in the Sun Quarter Network, our state library, the wildfire group that works with folks who get behind on utility bills, have worked with our low-income consumers to get this subsidy for Arizona. Of the 50 states, and we're certainly not in the top 10 for population. I believe we're number 11 in total signups, which is a testament to everybody working to make this happen. This subsidy is the difference between many families getting or not getting broadband. It is an economic decision. And in some cases, companies like Cox Communications, which has been a great partner for us, provides a service here in the Metro Phoenix area called Connect to Compete. It's $10 a month for 100 megabits for families with low-income families with children. You put that $30 subsidy, it's free internet for those folks. So we're very much fans of that program, and we try to work with our other carriers to do that as well. The BEAD program, the top one, that is the big one. We're looking at about $833 million, which is pretty significant. One of the challenges we have is the matching, but we do work with carriers and communities. Many of our counties have put up money. You look at Yavapai County has put in $30 million of ARPA dollars, Yuma County $20 million, really to participate. I'm a big believer the more partners we have, the bigger, stronger coalitions is how we make this work. There are some competitive programs. I mentioned the middle mile program. The digital equity program has a little bit of both. Erin and I are both pretty competitive people, so we're going to go out and we're going to get this money for Arizona. We're excited about this. $63 million is the call it the block grant portion that we expect to get. We are going to work directly with different groups, foundations, NGOs, education organizations. Digital equity is something that really spans a lot of different avenues. So this isn't something that one or two groups are going to receive all this funding. This is going to be spread out. And we believe that statewide, each community is unique. Obviously, we want scalable programs, but the important thing is spending time in the communities. I've said from the beginning in my job as state broadband director, it's not my job to sit in Phoenix and dictate policy. It's my job to get in my truck, to drive out and spend time with you, to understand what your needs are and develop a program together. This is even more important with digital equity. We have a lot of different groups in our society that are in need of this. Obviously everybody knows K-12 kids and devices. That's easy. There are a lot of programs for that. We have to pick the best ones. We have a very large senior population here in Arizona. Just helping my parents get vaccinated was an eye-opener for me. These are teachers with master's degrees, and they had a very difficult time getting through that process, and we need to help them with that. Governor Ducey is passionate about working with recently released incarcerated individuals, helping them get back into society and have that second chance opportunity. He did push through the Ban the Box program that we were applying for a state job. You're not checking a box. In many cases to show that you've done time. It gives them the ability to fully integrate, and that's important. Immigrant populations, we talk about this a lot. People think of Mexican and South American and Central American. We have refugees from all over the world here in Arizona. There's a substantial Afghan refugee population, and I have a feeling we're going to see quite a few Ukrainian refugees over the next couple years. So working within that context. But again, this matrix will give you an idea of where the money comes from, what's involved, who's involved, and just to give you some perspective, the dollar amounts, I jokingly refer to them as monopoly money because there is so much money flowing into this. It's my job to make sure that we pick the very best partners, people like Erin and Derek will speak later, to make sure that we don't waste this money. This is a once in a generation opportunity. This is, rural electrification under President Roosevelt. This is the interstate highway system under President Eisenhower. If we do this right, it will change the complexion of the state forever. Our rural communities will be able to compete apples for apples with what we have in Phoenix. I mean, obviously, we're the 5th largest city in the country, and we're going to get certain businesses that nobody else will. But you know what? There's no reason places like Yuma and Sierra Vista and Flagstaff can't compete for those type of jobs. I'm going to flip through this very quick, but this just gives you an idea of what the BEAD program, the digital equity program looks like. The priorities, and Erin had mentioned this earlier, veterans, seniors, incarcerated individuals, disabled individuals, language issues, rural. So it's pretty broad. So we have an opportunity to really craft our own programs, to go our own way. In terms of eligibility, I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of different groups that can do this. We're not picking winners here in the sense that we want one avenue or one government or certain types of nonprofits. The best ideas are going to rise to the top. I mean, I love the idea of taking programs that work effectively in our state. I had the opportunity to speak to your group, I guess it was last year, and Stephanie Parra in your group has a really interesting program with the Phoenix Union School District, Parent-Teacher Academy, where parents are trained, in many cases bilingual parents, on tech support functions so they can work with the other parents. It's just a lot easier when you're working with somebody that's in your daughter's class, and in many cases speak to your language and you're familiar with. Love programs like that are local, that hopefully can be scaled throughout our state. The BEAD program we mentioned earlier is a very large infrastructure program. There's going to be a lot of money going to what we call unserved communities. These are communities that just are not below 25 megabits, 3 megabit upload speeds. You're going to see a lot of activity in some of our most rural areas. Oops, I got these mixed up a bit, sorry. And the digital equity pool, we're looking at some money for planning. We're going to spend a lot of time on that, and then ultimately the $63 million for implementation. And then lastly, just to give you an idea of some of the folks that can participate in this, the different types of foundations, different types of groups. Again, if your organization is involved in digital equity, we certainly want to talk to you. There's going to be a very large outreach program. This is the kind of thing that we are required to do, but quite frankly, let's be honest, we're going to do that anyway. Nobody has all the best ideas. And just in talking with folks like Erin and Stephanie and others, you realize very quickly that there's a lot of ways to look at this. One of the issues that's really important to us is workforce here in Arizona. The opportunity for folks to step up the ladder of success. We had a really interesting call yesterday with the folks at Arizona Western College in Yuma about designing a program that can help, starting with a certificate program to a associate's program, and hopefully maybe to ASU if we can get ASU to work with us. This is being done in other parts of the country, in Louisiana, and Ohio and others. And you know what? We're not above stealing good ideas, so we're going to make that work. Erin is the general on this, and I'm going to defer to her wisdom. But we want to definitely press on this program. We're going to try to get this done quick. We're going to try to get these programs working quickly. This is a full-out sprint, because what we're seeing around the country right now, at least on the infrastructure side, is so much money is flowing into this field that there is competition for materials and people, and the costs keep going up. So what we want to do is we want to keep the very best people here in Arizona. We want to get them engaged, and we want to improve our state. And you know what? If we want to go out and help other states, which we do, we get calls all the time from other states saying, "Hey, how are you guys doing this?" We're going to help. But much like in the airplane, we're going to put those oxygen masks on first, and we're going to take care of ourselves, and then we're going to work with our partners in the other states. This is an exciting time for broadband. This is an exciting time for digital equity. I've never been in a situation like this where we've had this kind of funding and we've had this kind of popular support. From a political standpoint, we try really hard to keep the politics out of this, but I do tell every elected official I meet with that broadband is incredibly bipartisan and incredibly popular. The ones that get that, Senator Sinema is probably the best example, has run with this and done a great job. Obviously, Governor Ducey has done a great job with this. We had an excellent call with Mayor Gallego a couple weeks ago. People understand now that this is the kind of program that can change people's lives. We're here to help facilitate it and humbly do the best we can to make that happen. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all have. And thank you for giving me the chance.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was fantastic. And you do actually have two different questions. I will read them to you, and they are deep and they were really good. So related to digital equity, says PJ, broadband is the road to travel and critical path. Is the state considering a focus on education and blockchain, services and opportunities such as supply chain, peer-to-peer energy, trading, IoT, distributed voting, carbon, smart contracts, that kind of thing that impact quality of life?
Yeah, initially there is a big push to work within the other IIJA functions to try to find common needs and figure out how we can leverage the different programs. Transportation, we work very closely with ADOT. One of the big pushes within the IIJA are for electric vehicle charging stations. As somebody who owns an EV, I will tell you that's really important because there are not enough. But those require connectivity. You talk about alternative energy sources. I know hydrogen is really big and something we're talking to folks about, solar. All these require a degree of connectivity, particularly if you're doing them in extreme rural areas. When it comes to blockchain, and I will even go broader than that, cybersecurity, this is something that we're really going to have to take a look at. When you start giving people these tools, we have to understand that a lot of people aren't familiar with things like phishing and some of the many scams that we all see. These are the kind of things that we're going to have to help educate people as well, because it's not enough just to understand what you're doing, but you have to avoid the pitfalls, particularly with our seniors. I think that this is a real issue and something that we need to address in our outreach.
Thank you so much. One more question, and then I know you have to run. From Shane Leonard, who is also a fellow, as is John, by the way, in his comment that was in the chat. Hi, John. As a 2019 fellow, says Shane, I am participating today in his role as a planning commissioner for the city of Coolidge. Equity and equality are laudable goals, yes, they are, but how can we compel Cox, CenturyLink, and companies with demonstrated capabilities in customer service support to extend that service into rural Arizona? Similarly, how are we ensuring that companies that might provide broadband service aren't simply agreeing to provide service with no way to actually meet demand or expectations?
We build some pretty interesting language into our grant programs. The reality is that they do want access to build out. I think it's important to understand that Arizona is very much a light touch regulatory state. But that being said, if someone is going to take government money, my expectation is that it's not enough just to build it. They have to offer a low cost plan. They have to offer community engagement. They have to be wanted by the community. One of our biggest criteria for our $100 million grant, which we're going to announce next week, so keep your ears open for that, is how engaged. Are you receiving letters of community support? And are they actual real letters? Are they engaged? Do they want you there? I will say this for Coolidge and Pinal County, one of the challenges we have in Pinal County, as opposed to some of our other counties like Yuma County, Apache County, Navajo County, is we need someone to step up and be a champion in the county. It's so important to have somebody at the county commissioner level or at the mayor level say, this is important to us. Having that political will is vital, and we're definitely looking for partners. I will say that cities like Coolidge and Florence are going to do incredibly well simply because this is where the growth is going. You don't just have to have Lumen or Cox, which are both good companies, but you have companies like Zona Wired that are building in that area that provide fiber to the premise. So competition is probably the best way to do that. And we're all about bringing in new carriers to compete with the folks if they're not doing a good job. Actually, we're going to bring them in anyway because competition is good for everybody.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much. I know you have another call to get to. I appreciate your time a great deal. That was fantastic and incredibly informative. If anyone has questions that are follow-on questions, by the way, we'll absolutely make sure to get those to Jeff so that he can answer them. Same thing to Angela and to the rest of the panel. So Jeff, thank you again. It is my great privilege now to bring Mignonne Hollis to the floor. And again, just worth saying, Mignonne is another Flinn-Brown Fellow. She has begun this journey with Flinn and participates often, and her voice and the perspective that she brings in her area of expertise just adds so much value to this conversation. So I am tremendously grateful that you are here today, and I turn it over to you, my friend.
Thank you so very much, Erin, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm always excited to talk about rural. Everybody knows that. And so, you know, at the beginning, Erin, you were talking about partnerships and how that's just so vital and how we've worked through the network. So I was brought into this conversation because Erin saw the work that we were doing around a RISE grant through the USDA for building out a digital economy. So that's how we first got connected into this conversation. But before all of that started, I'm down here in Cochise County. I'm the executive director for the Arizona Regional Economic Development Foundation. And I'm going to take you through my presentation on a little tour of Cochise County because we are one of the only counties statewide that shrinks in population each and every time of the census. So that puts us in a little bit of a different situation. One of our pillars for AREDF is healthcare. And so one of our other fellows from the 2013 cohort was Jamie Snyder. And so Jamie, when she knew this was the deal, she put me on all kinds of statewide health improvement plan processes that we could look at to see where we could tap into things. So I really want to recognize Jamie Snyder and the work that she's done. The other couple people that I actually really need to thank, I believe Janet Major is on this call. She's not a fellow, but she's an amazing human who has helped us build out our project. And then I know that Lydia Rhonda is also on, and Lydia is always my sounding board for when we start to talk about anything for underserved and underrepresented communities. So those people initially that I want to thank. So let me pull this up, and I'm sorry, because one of our problems here often is broadband. Imagine that. So when COVID hit, we were really trying to figure out, like, what can we do? Where do we go? It really showed how vulnerable our community is, and especially because of the inadequate infrastructure that we experienced. And our suicide rate was going up so high. It's kind of hard to talk about, but it just really brought everything to the forefront of what we could do. So I'm gonna go over here to my slideshow. Give me just 1 second. Sorry about this, folks. I can't get back to my screen. Apologize. Actually, can I ask somebody to help me do this? No, Dawn, you have my presentation.
Backups for backups.
Backups for backups, if they're there. But I can walk you through this too. So Cochise County is located in the corner of the state. We have two borders. We have Naco and we have Douglas, port of entry. So that just gives you a bit of a visual of where we are, very remote. Jamie had put me onto a committee that really started to look at how could we help, how could we make an impact in the rural communities. And so one of the things that we saw early on is that we didn't have services, healthcare services in Cochise County, and they were lacking. And so I started having a conversation with that group about, hey, what do you think we could do? How can we build this out? And I pulled together a quick, white paper and said, one of the things that our foundation does really well is we do really well in incubators. And here's where I have to give the shout out to Russ Yelton, because he's really helped us pull these incubators together, and he's also a fellow. So we talked about, how do we make this work? How can we pull this all together? And we went after a grant. One of the things that, Jeff was talking about is that they move quickly. Well, those that know me know that nothing ever moves quick enough for me. I'm super, super impatient. So it wasn't quick enough for me. Before we could get money, we had to do a study for a study. And we've got people dying. And that is not an exaggeration. It is not an overstatement. And so with the help of Jamie getting us initially into money, we were able to tap into the money from the Arizona Department of Health and Human Services. And there was a pot of money there that we were able to roll out very quickly. And hats off to that department, because from the time I had the idea till the time it happened, it was only, 4 months. So that is a very quick time frame where they gave us funding. What we were able to do with that funding is to create what we call rural care. And it is a facility that operates as an incubator, but inside there, we also have a telehealth office. And this is where Janet comes in, because I don't know this. I'm an accountant by background, but Janet came down and it was like drinking from a fire hose times 17. And Janet is super, super passionate about the work she does. So she came down and really helped us figure out what we needed inside a telehealth office, what kind of equipment we needed, everything from what color the wall had to be painted. And especially when you're doing behavioral health, it had to be calming color. So she really, thank you so much, Janet, really helped us to get there. So inside of this incubator that we have, then we have a telehealth office that we were able to get the funding for. Now the funding we used was for the broadband piece, because that's where that comes in. And it was final mile. And we had problems with Cox. So what do? I go to my little Flinn-Brown directory and start calling up fellows who are at Cox, who are at Lumen, who are wherever I can find them. And we were able to get that done. Again, that took too long for me, But we were able to get that final mile into that building so that we could provide the telehealth services. And then we also have inside there, it's an incubator based on mental health. And we have 2 providers in there now. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide services to our community through that telehealth office. And when you think about it, and it's all based around mental health, at first we weren't sure if it should be more generalized. And then after speaking with Janet and some of the work that had been done around the state, we quickly realized that mental health was a place to go. So it works 2 ways. You can either be the provider that comes in and is recommending your patient to use the telehealth, or you can actually be the provider reaching out to your clients, right? And so what we see though is people that are coming from those vulnerable communities and those underserved communities be able to access and use that office. And it's generic in name, so it's called rural care. And we did that by design. If you think about people that are in an abusive situation and they don't feel safe in their home, and even if, let's say, they do have connectivity in their home, which most of the time they don't in the very rural areas, they're able to get on a bus line. And so we're right across the street from a bus station. So that works perfectly from a bus stop. So they can still get into our building and they can receive services. And all they ever have to tell somebody is they're going to rural care. So that's just been a very amazing piece to be able to do. And you know, we got that fiber laid, but again, that's just one of the ways we were able to use the technology and that broadband. And I keep saying that over and over because I think a lot of times people use that as a sexy term, like, oh, it's, you know, when we're talking economic development, we're going to say broadband, and here's what we're talking about with broadband. Well, when you look at the reality of where that connectivity really is in a rural community, it's not there. And to our first speaker's point, Angela, when she talked about, you know, building out that digital economy, and this is super important for me in this digital equity, is people didn't know what that meant, you know. And so when we were even talking in our pre-meeting, I said, let's define that a little bit better. And this is my shout out to Lydia Rhonda, because she came up with a campaign we're working on that's called I Am Tech, because it's that educational piece then that will educate younger people. Say, you know, if you're having a talk with an artist, let's say, for example, and you're speaking to that artist and you're saying, hey, you know, you're in the digital economy. And they're like, no, I don't even know what that means. I barely have internet. I don't. But then when you start digging into it and saying, well, are you cropping your photos? Are you using digital to get your photographs? How are you working that? Then we're able to point out, hey, you realize that you're tech. And so that whole little campaign, that's Lydia's. Thank you, Lydia, for letting me share that. But that's one of the ways that we've really dug into doing that, to getting the access that we need into our community so that we could serve the underserved and underrepresented in our community. So I'm happy to take any questions or speak a little bit more about that if anybody's got anything for me.
Thank you for making that. Real is not the right word, but from the perspective of knowing the impact that COVID had on us as human beings,
yeah,
the very personal experience that we went through, that our families went through, the disproportionate impact that it had on communities who are most disadvantaged. The story is important. It is,
you know, Erin, and the thing is so then, you know, people really don't want to talk about that they don't have access to broadband, because sometimes, you know, that becomes a class issue, or they just don't want to say that they don't have it, or they don't know how to use the technology that's there. So you have that. And then again, and then you have the piece about mental health that nobody wants to talk about either, right? You know, we say, oh, mental health is important, but when you dig down to it, what are any of us doing to really protect other people and their mental health? So it was kind of this perfect storm to be able to work. And again, I couldn't have done it without all of my partners. So I really want to thank them for helping me to make that vision come true.
Absolutely. And the Jamie that you mentioned, Jamie Snyder, who's one of our fellows from our cohort, she's the director at Access.
Right.
So throwing that out there.
Thank you, Erin.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are there any questions? And by the way, the complexities of rural. One of the reasons I'm sort of leaning into this is what you experience in Sierra Vista in Cochise County is unique to where you are, but every community has those unique things that are barriers, that are challenges that they are working to overcome. It's one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you, and that you and I can work together on this to make sure that as we're moving forward, we're doing it in a meaningful way. And that kind of stuff doesn't get overlooked.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you could be here. I didn't even check chat or the Q&A. Let's see. And there were, by the way, there were 2 questions that were, oh good, Jeff answered them, but there are other questions at the end of that related to community colleges, Dr. Glasper, that are probably perfect and right up your alley. So I wasn't prompting anyone to answer them just yet. Does anyone have a question for Mignonne before I sadly excuse her? I love the opportunity to get to talk to you again. Okay. Well, we are quite fortunate to have some other brilliant humans here with us today. So I want to turn over now to Derek Masseth. Derek is the executive director of Sun Corridor Network. I suspect there are quite a few folks who don't know what SCN is. So I would love for you to explain who you are, what you do, and how you are contributing and playing in this space.
Great, Erin. Thanks for that introduction. And Mignonne, before you leave, I just want to say I very much too appreciate how you made you made it real, right, and human. Except that you stole one of my illusions from me, because I've been building.
I borrowed. I did not steal.
No. I'll tell. So I've spent the preponderance of my career, pushing probably 30 years at this point, building and managing very large infrastructures in support of education, largely in support of education. And people think that that's a high pressure job, and there's a lot going on, and certainly those things are true. But I have always said, but the good thing is it's not life and limb. Well, it is now, or at least it can be, and you really drove that home for me just now. So I'm dealing with the loss of that illusion as I enter this conversation, but it really does drive it home, the value and the impact that broadband can and does have. So thank you. While I pull up my slide deck here, I did introduce myself there a little bit. So I'm Derek Masseth. I have spent quite a lot of time, 28, 30 years now, building and managing infrastructures in support largely of higher education here in the state of Arizona. Are you seeing a slideshow now? The whole show, not the presenter view or whatever? Okay, good. Awesome. And so, yeah, Erin, I suspected people, some on this call might not even know the Sun Corridor Network exists, or that Arizona has such a thing. And so I did start with a bit of an introduction. So we're a network operator here in the state who has a public service mission, right? So our mission is very much to enable and improve internet access throughout Arizona, because we know that empowers communities to engage in education, science, telehealth, and other activities. And we do that through a various means that we'll talk about here in a bit. But we call ourselves Arizona's Research and Education Network. And the truth is we are founded by and remain embedded within the university system here in Arizona. So we suggest that we're a public sector, public service agency, and it really is absolutely core to our mission as an extension of the university systems. They realized back in 2013 that they and their missions would be advantaged by the establishment of a dedicated network focused on the unique needs of higher education and education more broadly, along with their research missions. And so they founded this little organization known as the Sun Corridor Network. And in the 9 years now, I guess, since our inception, we've had the privilege to kind of branch or expand our mission from focusing on the universities to being able to take our broadband expertise and our presence in the market and begin to deliver internet and intranet inside of the state of Arizona capabilities to K-12s, K-12 schools, libraries, community anchors, municipalities, really any public sector agency in the state. So we're broadband experts kind of embedded inside of the public service mission of the university systems here in Arizona. This is a slide that just says, you know, we sell ISP much like a lot of the other actual traditional commercial ISP services. Kind of an example sheet of our current memberships. And one thing I always like to point out on this slide is that, you know, there's a bunch of icons here, but if you look at Arizona State University, you know, single biggest university in the country at this point with over 180,000 learners. Maricopa Community College is the single biggest community college system in the United States of America. And so, you know, we live up to the demands on a daily basis to two of the largest and most complex educational enterprises in the country. So then that's a fun challenge. We enjoy it every day. As an extension of those university missions and of their need to connect their students and their commitments to the communities that they serve, we've been involved in a collection of digital equity projects and just wanted to go through a few of those as exemplars for just as examples for the art of the possible in the digital equity and specifically kind of in the public service digital equity space. So Maryvale is a community in Phoenix, not terribly far from ASU's main campus or their downtown campus, where the Watts College has a Maryvale 1 Square Mile initiative. It's a community that is underserved in a lot of ways, and they don't get a lot of very good broadband in the area. And it's even when it is available, it's not particularly accessible from an affordability perspective. And so, as an extension of ASU's outreach mission, we worked with the Isaac School District in that area to install, as an extension of the Isaac School District network, where the Sun Corridor network is their ISP. We took broadcast equipment that's pictured in the right of this picture, the one with the bricks on it, on the rooftops of the schools, and that broadcast internet into homes in the area through this picture here in the center, thereby connecting students to their school. And in most cases also to the internet if the household wanted it, for the purposes of engaging in education first, but then secondarily also to enable those households to engage in telehealth, engage in you know, at the time, you know, signing up for vaccines and you know, applying for jobs or digital skilling or what have you. And so this was a very rich and deep experience for us. I would say we learned a lot, and we learned a lot about the value of community partnerships and collaborations. I think everybody so far that's spoken has suggested that a good, strong, collaborative community is really what's required. Every community has its own kind of personality and footprint, and so you know, bringing the knowledge of your community to bear when working with networks and building networks to purpose is critically important. Another set of activities we've been pretty intimately involved in, and this is one that's pretty near and dear to my heart, but it's the activities in and around Yuma County, and they're an exemplar project for me because they are one of the examples of when everyone comes together, right? The county, the city, the other, you know, the city of Yuma plus other, the other cities and towns in the area, the economic development folks, businesses in the area, the schools, the libraries. Literally they had a working group out in Yuma where everyone who had an interest in advancing broadband was welcome and encouraged to participate. Ultimately, they ran an RFP for a middle mile network. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's the green lines on the map that they're going to get built, a fiber network that spans basically all of the communities in Yuma County. They ran an RFP. They used ARPA dollars to make an award to Allo, the company that Jeff mentioned a bit ago. And because of the collaboration and because of their deep knowledge of what their community needed, they were able to secure, I think, the right set of assets from the right provider. Sun Corridor Network was at the table throughout as an advisor and as a public service organization that understands this industry quite well. And we're ready to do that elsewhere in the state. Additionally, through those collaborations, we, in support of the education mission in the Yuma region, we were able, because of some of the foundational work that's being done in the broadband planning space in Yuma, we advanced the idea of building a science network on top of this network in support of science educational collaborations between the educational enterprises in the area, which is actually all three universities, Arizona Western College and the K-12 schools. And so we won that grant, and we're actively working with the education community in that area to advance scientific education with real world science data derived from the fields, the agricultural fields in the area. So very exciting set of activity. And I'm going to rush through this because I'm in a hurry to hear from Rufus. So another example, City of Page. This one's interesting because we have an interest in collecting science data about the ecosystem in Page, but Coconino Community College and Northern Arizona University also have a need to get connectivity into some households in Page. City of Page wants to do some smart city activity. So we sought and achieved a grant to put some CBRS, that's fundamentally private cellular networking, on the rooftop of Community College in Page, and we're delivering on all of those use cases. And so it's an exciting project there. If you haven't heard of the Final Mile project driven by the Arizona Rural Schools Association, it's kind of a different model from the ones I've just talked about. But it fundamentally enables providers to leverage the fiber that exists at most schools in rural Arizona and school facilities to broadcast, much like we did at Isaac in Maryvale, to broadcast internet to the surrounding communities. So 5 districts are lit up. We've served in an advisory capacity to this project. There's 4 new opportunities on the streets now. And we would love to take this statewide, or at least to any rural school district that is willing and interested. Last but not least, if you're not familiar with Arizona's Middle Mile project, the Arizona Department of Transportation, Jeff Sobotka's office, at the Commerce Authority, the governor's office, and the SCN are all partnering to build fiber and conduit along the interstates in Arizona, starting with 17 and 19. Continuing on I-40, this ecosystem will have capacity in it for carriers to build, and it will have capacity in it for Sun Corridor to use for public purposes. If you're anywhere near these geographies, this will change the game for your communities. Even if you're not, it's likely that we can leverage these infrastructure to get infrastructure to wherever you are. These projects will go live early next year, and they are going to change the game for delivering broadband in support of digital equity throughout the state of Arizona. So last but not least, and then we can jump to questions and/or Rufus. But from my perspective, the keys to success, I think they've already been mentioned a fair amount, but engagement. You see engagement, collaboration, partnership, they're all different ways of saying almost the same thing, right? So work together, represent your community, advocate for your community, bring people together. Broadband providers have a menu of services they want to sell. You may not, that they may not be what you need, and so understand what you need, and then bring them in and advocate for that. So with that, I think I'm gonna close this share, and we can move on to Rufus. So sorry for the rush, but I do want to get on to Rufus's talk. So thanks, Erin.
Absolutely, Derek. Thank you so much. I could go on for a very long time about how much I admire the work that Sun Corridor is doing. And we're very grateful for your partnership. DEI and Sun Corridor Network work collaboratively together. Echoed here, we keep hearing it is the common theme, capacity and partnership, and how that actually gets you to where you want to go. So for that, I'm very, very grateful. And certainly I was managing the chat while you were talking. And there's lots of folks who would like to connect, and I think you are hitting the nail on the head that these are all game-changing things, and so increasing awareness, increasing engagement, and listening to the people who will be impacted to make sure that whatever we bring adds value and is used because it's useful. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So moving on, and we'll put questions at the end, please, because I want to make sure that we have plenty of time. Dr. Rufus Glasper is someone that I've known for, oh my goodness, now over 15 years. He is absolutely one of my favorite people. A common theme that is run through this, Rufus, is workforce and jobs and the role of higher education and community college. And all of that is in your sweet spot, which is why I wanted you to go last and why I wanted you to be the expert that would speak to these things, because you have an eye for what is on the horizon and what is possible right now, and how to be looking at that and working to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the learners who we serve. So please, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be in front of the Flinn Civic Leadership Group. I am the president and CEO for the League for Innovation in the Community College, which has been located in Arizona since 1999. And prior to that, I was with the Maricopa system for 30 years. So in the role as the CEO for the system, I had an opportunity to speak to the Flinn Leadership Group on an annual basis, sharing my opinion. I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things. Today, I'm excited about the conversation, and I'm excited about the people that you engage when you start a journey. Prior to my most recent journey, I had never met Jeff, nor had I met Derek. And I'll tell you a little bit about the project. And I got reconnected with Erin. The League for Innovation is currently involved in a project relative to looking at the impacts of the pandemic and what many of our students are going through in terms of insecurities. We were approached by the Garcia Foundation because of work we were doing with the Walmart Foundation with rural colleges around hunger with community college students. And they had a conversation with us and asked, would you be interested in a project within Arizona? And I am located in Arizona. And I was excited about the conversation because we were looking at wraparound services to support students that had issues around hunger, housing, and connection to jobs. And it's the first generation, low income, the profile of the students that for the majority attend community colleges, and the ones that were most impacted and exemplified the notion of the digital divide when the pandemic hit. And as we were talking about what the project was about, it involves wraparound services to support these students and others in our ecosystem within our community. And it's about bringing resources to those areas within our state. So I was tasked with the opportunity to bring together a minimum of 4 colleges that met a profile. And that profile was Hispanic serving institutions, 25% or more, tribal serving, and again, the profile of the community colleges. In our quest to bring colleges, we were able to bring to the table Coconino Community College, Arizona Western Community College, Pima Community College, and San Carlos Apache. And I share with you the 4 colleges that we're working with because everything that we will talk about throughout the progress of this project for at least a 3-year period is dependent upon delivering opportunities and challenges that are, for the most part, based upon access to broadband. And when we think about the notion, if we can't get the broadband in place, we will have a difficult time achieving our goals. So as we entered into these conversations, I want to share some other information with you. The economic impact from the most recent information completed by EMSI on the Arizona community colleges, and this was in 2020, February 2020, prior to the pandemic. The economic impact to the state of Arizona is $14.1 billion, or 211,258 jobs. Throughout the pandemic, community colleges were impacted more in loss of enrollment than any other educational institution across the country. We are still experiencing double-digit enrollment declines. Many of those enrollment declines are precipitated by the fact that so many of our students are needing to support their families. They're choosing not to come to class, be involved in a structured schedule, and we're looking for other ways to attend classes that are not campus-based, ground-based, and getting our faculty to understand that, quite frankly, from my perspective, we're now looking at work-based learning and possibly trying to look at some schedules of our classes that are based around student schedules. So as we go through this particular journey, we are looking at the fact that in June of 2020, Opportunity America produced a publication that's entitled The Indispensable Institution, and they were describing community colleges. It's a strategy around reimagining our time and place and reimagining community colleges for the future and not for the day. Everything that I'm hearing today is evolving around the notion of digital literacy. It's evolving around what you did not know or even think you wanted to know prior to the pandemic. You are now forced into having some level of expertise that will allow you to move faster, quicker, and better, and understand how to support yourself in your community. The National Science Foundation is involved in a project that they are entitling as Missing Millions. The missing millions are those individuals that are not showing up and looking at undergraduate STEM classes as those classes that require math and require those areas of expertise that they think is far above their desire to address the areas of learning. And I'll run off some of the undergraduate STEMs. We're talking about cyber, IT, manufacturing, digital learning, bioscience, biotech, healthcare. These are all the areas of which we are now seeing opportunities for jobs. Conversations that were being shared today was around digital learning. And digital learning, where the question that came from Sudesh was, can community colleges and companies come together to collaborate and develop future local tech workforce? And the answer is, we should, or we should demise. Our opportunities are now. I have been proffering from my seat at the league that community colleges need to move at the speed of business and industry and not at the speed of education. If we move at the speed of education, we will not move nearly as fast, and we can't move as fast as technology is changing. So as we're looking at our programs now, you will see us looking at more shorter term courses. We're looking at fast track credentials, micro credentials, and micro pathways. I'm excited to hear about what Jeff was referring to, the conversation at Arizona Western about a certificate that can allow someone to get a job. And then if they want to come back to the community colleges to complete a 2-year degree or transfer to ASU or a state university, that option is there. That has to be a part of our thinking. We have to be able to position and look at this as an opportunity to have stackable credentials, to not look at the average student that comes into a community colleges for the sake of financial aid says that I want to graduate in less than 2 years, in less than 2.5 years, and I want to transfer to the university. That's 85%. In 3-year times, the actual number is about 26%. And if you look at what choices that students are having to make, life gets in the way. So what we are trying to look at right now is an opportunity to say, let's take life into consideration. Let's take the pandemic. Let's look at an opportunity for change. And let's see how we can partner with business and industry in order to move our curriculum process changes now that require somewhere around 10 months. And Boeing has come to a college within the state to say, I need harness workers. And we told them that we would be able to get you a new curriculum and train your people, but we wouldn't be able to start until it gets out of the curriculum committee in 10 months. And they said, I need it in 10 weeks. So we had to turn it around. We had to figure out how we're going to move faster and quicker and better. As we move forward, I want to talk about 2 other things that I think are supported by the meeting that Governor Ducey had with the community college presidents, where he talked about community colleges are part of that economic engine that drives Arizona's economic momentum. We should be looked at as one of those anchor institutions within our state. The needs of the global economy have changed. There should be increased focus on technology, and you've already talked about equity. There's incremental change is not enough. We need to do disruptive change at this point in time so that we can set the bar and move faster, quicker, and better. There must be multiple entry points into our jobs now, not just a single entry point. We should remove artificial barriers. And right now, for community colleges, under the accreditation type of standards for credit courses, you must have a master's degree in the area or a master's degree plus 18. I am pushing to merge credit and non-credit because quality assurance should be defined by that individual that has the skills and should be codified by a type of credential that would allow you to say that it's portable and that you can get a job that will pay you at least a livable wage for a family for, if not more. That micro credentials and micro pathways will be a part of the future moving forward, but the opportunities to complete that degree should not be taken away from you. And the alignment between accreditation and our institutions needs to be wiped away. And I'm trying to say a nice word. I used to be a trustee for the Higher Learning Commission, which is a regional accreditor for 20 states. And I've been working with them for the last 6 years since I've been at the league. We now have them partnering with us on building micro-credentials and stacking them onto degrees so that when someone says, will this be acceptable, then we will already have their blessing. Finally, I will close and allow for some questions here, and that's on the role of philanthropy. Philanthropy can help change the narrative by refocusing investments on the systemic conditions that lead to economic insecurity for all workers. When you sum it up that way, you can see that you can address everyone within our state. You can look at our populations. You can give them broadband access. You can give them training. Within the projects that the league is working on right now, we're working on programs with the Western Association of Food Chains to bring in first generation students that can be managers and leads in Fry's, in Walmart, that can be part of this whole generation of faces that you have never seen in some of our major companies. We're also, as I mentioned, working with the Garcia Foundation on this particular project within Arizona. The time is now. The one thing I will tell you about this project is that with the work and the support of the Garcia Foundation and providing wraparound services, we've already exceeded over 20 to 22 contacts, such as Erin, such as Jeff, such as the Center for the Future of Arizona, Be a Leader, and all of these areas that can support us in our students and can help us reach our equity goals, help us reach our training goals. And we're also bringing to the table employers and apprenticeships and opportunities for the new digital age that continues to get newer and newer. And we hope to be a part of that journey for years to come. So Erin, that's what I have for right now, and I'm open to any questions.
I was over here feverishly just nodding, which I've been told you're not supposed to do, but I was just, I was like, yes, yes. Thank you so much. I am so grateful that you were able to touch on so many things within such a short amount of time, and everything that you said, I completely agree with. We're talking about the jobs of the future, the connection between philanthropy to fill gaps, to make sure that we're getting to equity, that on the back of broadband, that we're building all of these other things, reciprocity between industry, pulling skills down to make sure that we're doing accreditation wisely. And thank you. I am really looking forward to working with you moving forward. I've been told that I'm supposed to have a call to action at the end of this. I want to make sure whether there's any questions. And please, by the way, if you have questions that we didn't have time to get to, my apologies for the time. There's just lots of really good people we wanted to have talk. Send them. We will make sure that they are answered. But I've been told there's supposed to be a call to action. So the call to action is this. Again, it will take everyone leaning in with their shoulders to do this work and do it well. Everyone has their own unique knowledge, skills, and abilities. We really want to collaborate. We really want to listen. We want to know what's unique in your community. We want to make sure that we're working and co-creating. And as we build the plan, that the plan is actually a good plan that will do the work. So from me personally in DEI, please reach out. Here's my, sorry, well, we'll send out the contact information. I can also put it in here. But please reach out. We absolutely want to work and to collaborate. Everyone on this call is a leader in your respective field. We take very seriously the role of collaboration and making sure that we're doing a very good job. To the panelists who just so generously gave of their time today, your expertise is just greatly appreciated, in your generosity and your willingness to participate. I am personally very, very grateful. To all the fellows who came, yay! Really glad that you're here and grateful that you're part of this network and that I'm part of this network. Dr. Glasper, Derek, Mignonne, Center for Civic Leadership, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. And I really do look forward to working with all of you in the near future. That we are at an accelerated pace right now. So when I say reach out, I mean, like, go ahead and email me today and we'll talk. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Take care, folks.
Bye.
Bye.